The people under 5 needed some nurturing. They just needed to hear from the brand and be sold through maybe marketing collateral. So there was anyone on these forms, on the contact forms and in the sign up flow of this company. If they answered less than 5 employees, they got nurtured. If they answered above 10, they got fast tracked to a phone call.
Welcome to the Magnificent Marketing Podcast, where we interview the top marketing experts in the world and keep you up to date on all the changes and best practices to help you grow your business and stay on the cutting edge. Welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Sujan Patel, who is the co-founder of Web Profits, a growth marketing agency helping companies leverage the latest and greatest marketing strategy to fuel their businesses. Sujan has over 13 years of internet marketing experience and has led the digital marketing strategy for companies like Salesforce, Mint, Intuit, and many other Fortune 500 caliber companies. And today, we are going to be talking about sales enablement, how sales and marketing can work together. Sujan, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this because it's the missing piece of the whole puzzle of growth.
It really is. It really is. Sales and marketing used to be different departments, used to be siloed, used to point fingers at each other all the time. And now they're all holding hands and knowing that they need to be kumbaya with each other and start working together because one success leads to the other. But would first like for people out there who have not necessarily aren't familiar with the term sales enablement, can you explain that from the marketing side, and then what it is, and then why it's so key?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people there's a lot of different meanings for it, but in this context, what I'm talking about here is really if your marketing team is generating leads, it's how you can really from the marketing perspective enable the sales side to whether it's empower them with data, it's to provide them with qualifications or get that feedback and have a qualification filter so that what's good lead, what's bad. It could be even things like setting up chatbots so that where you can then both together qualify somebody and then teeing it up for an easier way for a salesperson to then jump on a call. So to put it short, it's a way it's from when a visitor comes to the site to a sales qualified lead happens or a marketing qualified lead lands in the lap of a salesperson. It's to shorten that window and using either technology, process, and communications to do so.
Gotcha. So basically it's almost as if it sounds, right? Like marketing is known to generate branding, awareness, leads, that sort of thing. But what we're talking about, that's not where their job ends. It's to enable the sales team to make more sales all the way through that process, all the way through the journey, and not just like say, okay, sales leads have been handed off, baton's been passed, we're out. This is to help them throughout that process.
Yeah, so I'll give you, exactly. I'll give you a quick example. So at one of my companies, voilanorbert.com, we get around 16,000 new leads or trials a month. There is no way a salesperson or sales team can target 15 or 16,000 people. I mean, if you tried to do it, I would need a team of like 8 people full time to go and even remotely tackle 100% of those leads. So obviously not all of them are going to be qualified. So, the marketing end, it's which one are qualified? Which ones have leading indicators that they are going to be qualified? What are the activities of those 15,000 people? Like, who are the people of those 15,000 that are actually using the product? So there's, again, qualifying them with what's your company name? What's your company size? Stuff like that. There's maybe even enriching that data. What's their position at the company? What is their company? Just gathering it by the, email address and enriching it with, again, Vol and Norbert, weird situation because we actually have an enrichment service, but ultimately you can enrich that data and grab company name, title of the position. And then lastly, it's activity based. So, there's lots of ways you could do this. Like if there's a user who comes in and does a lot of things, maybe they use a product like 5-6 times. Well, those guys are raising their hand saying, I want help. Ping those guys, right? And then there's also other things like people who come to the website, maybe they don't convert. Maybe there are high quality prospects there that you just haven't identified. So there's things like Clearbit Reveal or reverse IP lookup that you can find the person who came to your website and then ping them. So that's what I mean by sales enablement. And it's, again, 15,000 people, 16,000 people, with all the filters I stated, that might turn into like 500 people, and that's a great target list for a salesperson. That's like giving them gold.
Mm-hmm.
But giving them 15,000, that is too much. It's like, getting them to qualify themselves. They're never gonna. You're getting them to fail, essentially.
Yeah. No, it's so funny you mentioned that. Yeah, I'm dealing with that right now myself, as well as like you almost shoot yourself in the foot by getting people leads sometimes, because now they have too many that they're not being able to follow up with correctly. So you either need to now address it on the back end and sift through those, or you can think that through at the beginning, like you're saying, and making sure that they do only have the highest people to talk. What's the 80-20 rule? 80% of your sales comes from 20% of your actions, or same thing goes with the leads, right? So
exactly.
And so you want them to be calling on those 20%, right? So yeah, it sounds like there's so many nuances here. So many different ways you can apply sales enablement from the marketing to the sales side. And I have, read about this from you a lot in the past, but especially preparing for this podcast, I dug into a lot of what you have taught and speak about. And so I'd like to kind of start at the top, because I think it's a no-brainer. You sold us on the need for this, the need for sales enablement on the marketing side. But let's see, how do we get sales and marketing to work together? So I'd love for you to start at the top and work our ways down on how you have seen, either you've done it yourself or you've coached people to do it, or you've seen other companies do it. How do we get them to work together, starting at the top here?
Yeah, so there's two parts to this. One is, how do you get them to start? And then the second part is, how do you keep them going, right? On an ongoing basis. So ongoing basis, I'll answer that because it's really easy. Have weekly or bi-weekly meetings with the VP of marketing, VP of sales, or the heads of each department. It's actually talking, going through challenges, sharing what's going on, and getting feedback from the sales of like the qualitative stuff, the soft and fuzzy. Like, I had 700 calls, but one guy stood out and he said this and that, and I think that's really powerful. Something you can put on the website. Stuff like that is what you're going to hear back from the salesperson. But how do you get started? The easiest way is, if you're the head of a marketing department or head of a sales department, go grab your counterpart, take them to beer, take them for happy hour, grab them, you buy them a beer, or grab lunch with them, a long lunch, a late lunch, ideally. This is the greatest way to do this, because you form a bond. You kind of get on the same team, and you're not going to yell at the other person. You can't really say too much bad stuff if the guy bought you a beer, right? And also, you don't have too much time either, right?
So reciprocity. It's a big marketing thing. I hear you. Go ahead.
Yep. So I think that's the easiest way to have a non-confrontational, very lightweight meeting to kind of figure out what the best way to do is. Now, ideally, the best way is not just to get your sales team involved, it's actually to get your customer support team, customer success team, and somebody on the product side involved. So start with marketing and sales. It's really something you can chew on. Then go get the support leader involved. And what the point of this is to just, the marketing person should be presenting what's happening. Okay, we got 100 leads coming in. This is how much traffic we've gotten. It's going well. Here's what we're doing. Salesperson is to give feedback. Actually, everybody in that room should be giving feedback on what happened that week, that month, the qualitative stuff. Support person can make, well, we got this many leads, and salesperson closed this many people, but like 6 of these people are saying, they're complaining about, doesn't meet my criteria, or like there's a bug, or there's whatever, and that might, if there's a bug, the salesperson can be like, hey, I'm going to sign you up, but there, just know there might be a weird thing that happens here. Don't worry, we're fixing it, right? Like, if you tell somebody there's a bug or there's something we're going to fix, like, they're less likely, a customer at least, less likely to have a bad reaction. So anyways, on the product side, the sales and marketing and people can then give their feedback. I'm like, hey, look, we're doing this, we're talking to sales, we're talking to prospects, but it would be really nice to have this in the product here, right? And so now you have a conversation between everybody, all the stakeholders who ultimately control the product and the website and the whole user and customer experience to actually make an impact. Now, it's not going to happen overnight. Get the sales and marketing people talking. Share that information with the CEO, COO, whoever really, who's going to help then from the top down institute more people coming together to have this conversation. When I looked at my career and I looked at I was actually updating my LinkedIn profile. I'm like, what are the best things I've done in my career? And I actually looked back at the last 10 years, and it wasn't actually anything I did on the marketing front. It's this whole system I'm just talking to you about. It's getting everybody together. And I didn't change the world in this, in the few companies I implemented this for, but I did change the way I did get the product guy to get one thing in there, one thing in the next sprint that helped sales and marketing. I did get the marketing person to listen to the salesperson to change a little bit the way they onboarded. And those little bits, that's it. I look at this as a flywheel. So those little things actually dramatically improved. It actually sped up the flywheel so that other things can kind of fall into place.
No, I love it. I mean, there's little bitty things can make all the difference in the world. And yep. I have, my mindset's always let's improve this by 0.2%, and then maybe if we do this, it might do 2% and then 1% here. And then at the end of the day, putting that, getting the idea or having that conversation where you get an extra amazing testimonial that somebody talked about and described this solution for them, what you did for them in a certain way that a salesperson brings up when they most likely would have just been like, oh, that was nice. Thanks, man. You made my day. Right. Yeah. Instead, it's no, let's make everybody's day moving forward by having the way he said this or did this or this kind of feedback. So I love what you're saying. And I really want to drive that home is take these small little victories and these small little improvements, because you're not always going to have an overhaul idea that's going to be that big of a deal. But these little bitty things, are all, make all the difference in the world. Now, I would like to circle back to that initial meeting, because I remember reading something from you. You said there was 3 main things to identify in that, and I'd like to point those out because I thought they were genius for this initial meeting. And you mentioned, and you talked about this, but you didn't say this word, but identifying the friction points in the sales funnel. I think that's so smart to do that, because I think you're gonna get so much great feedback. And then you mentioned, defining the ideal lead and then developing customer personas. But I would like to have you touch on point number 2 on defining the ideal lead, because to me, that is probably one of the bestest things, if that's a word, the bestest things that you can get out of these initial conversations, right from the get-go, because a lot of the times that gets lost from sales to marketing. Can you touch on that a little bit or dig into that one for us? Yeah,
absolutely. So I think the point I try to make on that in that content, and when I say this, is that it's those little things. It's the qualifications of which a salesperson knows when they're on a call. Like if you and I talked, and I was trying to sell you a pool in your backyard, but you lived in a condo, it would just not work, right? It just doesn't make sense. You can't, there's nowhere to dig a hole unless it's your bathtub, which you have water right there. So it's really the little things that you get from people that happen on a phone call or happen in a conversation that you would never get in a form, on a marketing form or website. So getting that feedback is really, really hard. It's really easy to provide, in a conversation. It's really hard to provide in a form. And so that's why this is kind of the conversation to have, and understanding that the customer success, the sales and support people know the customer really, really well, because they talk to them every single day. The marketing people talk at them and they do things to kind of engage them, but they don't have that feedback loop. And it's impossible for a marketing person to get that feedback loop. It just doesn't happen unless they're going out there talking to customers. And which then, if you aren't talking to them as much as the other guys are. So the volume is there. You might get a sample size. So the qualifications can drastically be improved once you just have that conversation starting. And it's not like you're not like the marketing guy asking, hey, what are things you like in a conversation? what you should ask the salespeople is, or even support or success people, is like, hey, who are the best customers? Like, who are the people coming through? Or what are the things people are objecting to? And why I say this is that will help you understand the customer a lot better, right? You might hear somebody says an objection, you might hear, well, the people that are only 3 user or under accounts, or small companies, are really having a problem with this part, right? Usually it's price, or the best customers are saying this and that, and then you can, as a marketer, you're like, how big is the company? Any similarities? So what happens here is that there's what I call unknown unknowns.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides don't know what to ask and don't know what to look for, right? Those are the two problems there. And that is the magic of this customer. So if you don't know what to look for and you don't know what to ask to get to what you don't know what to look for, again, you're never going to get there, right? It's just not possible unless you magically find this place.
Yeah, I love. Yeah, nothing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was just saying, I love everything you're saying, and it makes so much sense being on both sides of it. Being a salesperson and then being a marketing person. It's like you do hear so many things that unless prompted and asked, you just don't pass it on a lot of the time. For bigger companies, they probably have they have no idea where the hell to pass the idea to.
Yeah.
Potentially, right? Let alone even thinking that it's same thing with awareness, right? Awareness of our company and awareness that you have a problem, and awareness that there's a solution for you. That's the same sort of thing for salespeople sometimes. They might not even be aware that they even have a voice to pass it on. And then who do I pass it on to? So being proactive as a marketing department or a marketing lead to get this going is going to be so, I think, welcomed with open arms. I mean, is that your experience in working? Like the sales team was like, hell yeah. Now we get to tell people, what I'm hearing all the time, and you can market better, bring in better leads, better qualified leads, more of them. Yes, let's go. Right? I mean, because I think a lot of times marketing and sales sometimes in the past has been like this. But you're telling me when marketers bring it in, salespeople are open arms. Let's do this.
Yeah, and here's one that was really simple that I'll give you a concrete example. So I won't say the company name, but I'll just say that when talking to the salespeople, we found out that customers with over 10 employees using the platform were like 10 times better. Higher LTV, like they had this big problem. So like it was an easy sale. It's like a slam dunk. People with under 5 employees using the platform, they were really weary on price, and like they had so much more. It took them like 3-4 phone calls and conversations to get them to the finish line. There was a lot of hard work. So there's 2 points here. The people under 5 needed some nurturing. They just needed to hear from the brand and be sold through maybe marketing collateral. So there was anyone on these forms, on the contact forms and in the sign up flow of this company, if they answered less than 5 employees, they got nurtured. If they answered above 10, they got fast tracked to a phone call. In fact, when you signed up and said over 10 employees, it actually automatically assigned you to a salesperson and gave you the number, and immediately like prompted you to actually not use the product, but to actually schedule a meeting. Now the guys under 5, they had the onboarding, they had videos provided to them. They got asked to join a webinar because we knew the webinar, the one-to-many style of teaching or selling, was they were able to kind of soft sell them, nurture them, and educate them. So ultimately, it saved the salespeople a lot of time because they didn't have to get stuck with they knew who they were dealing with. But also, it took the people that are above 10 employees and fast tracked them to the time it took from a contact form or sign up form to a phone call. What went from like 2-3 days for everybody blended to about 18 hours for the better customers that they wanted.
That's so smart. I mean, there's so many efficiencies you have found in that, not to mention better results because of the efficiencies. Happier salespeople are a result of this. I mean, that's a side benefit here too, mind you. Employee turnover, happiness leads to the next person being happier. If this person's happier, it just all spirals in the right direction. You can spiral one way or the other, right? So you can spiral in the right direction. So I mean, I absolutely appreciate and love everything I'm hearing from you today. Now, let's talk about moving forward as this, relationship, the whole sales and marketing collaboration, maturates here and ongoing. How do you keep these meetings fresh? How do you keep them structured so you can be efficient with it? Obviously, once you go through your first few, objectives that we touched on earlier, those are somewhat accomplished. Obviously, it's always going to be an adjustment and moving target a bit. But, you don't want these to get stale. You want them to be efficient. You want them to keep them fun. So what advice do you have for everybody as you get going, as things are rolling for these ongoing meetups?
Yeah, so I think the best thing to do is kind of have meeting notes. I usually invite somebody like a mid-level marketing person, just like, hey, can you jump in, take notes, and start with taking notes so you can pass it to everybody. Eventually, people are going to be on vacation, not going to be able to make every meeting. So it's good for the people who missed it to like have these notes, the key takeaways or the key updates from each department. So I like to keep it round robin where everyone's kind of like going and giving their updates. They have maybe 2 minutes to talk about what they're doing, and keep it 2 minutes because it can go on forever. It can be a rant. It's like, hey, what's going on? And then what are the things, and the marketing team, like, what are the things we're going to be releasing in this next week or next 2 weeks or whatever. So that eventually will get old. It get really old because you're giving the update on the fly. The 2 minutes really turns into 5 minutes, and then you have a 30-minute conversation of just listening, or 30 minutes of listening, and then maybe 5 minutes of talk, right? It gets old, gets drawn out. So what you do then is, over time, you circulate that same document. Say, hey, instead of talking through it here, have it filled out before you come into the room. And now you spend the first few minutes reading the document, and then we talk openly. So you have 30 minutes of, or 25 minutes of maybe just open conversation. And again, like I did these weeklies to start, and it turned into monthly, it was weekly 30-minute call meetings, turned into weekly hour-long because we had a lot to discuss. And then after a few months, it turned into like bi-weekly, and eventually an hour-long monthly call. And now we do it quarterly. It's like we don't need to have these long drawn out conversations because things don't change that often once you get that initial feedback. So play around with timing. Don't force a weekly, don't force monthly, don't force an agenda. Implement an agenda and see what works. For us, meeting notes worked really, really well. And then like updates before you actually jumped on the call or meeting is very impactful.
Great point. And I was curious what you were going to say. Who knows if you were going to say, we'll keep the format the same, do it on this way. But you've really painted a nice picture there. And I think you're going to help save people, again, a lot of time. Time is so precious. But, these meetings are so important. But, they, not if they become mundane and monotonous and everything. So much better to have a bi-weekly or a monthly or end up being a quarterly impactful meeting once you get things rolling. Versus, just having a standard meeting just to have it. Because to me, I get really annoyed unless I know why I'm doing something. If I'm doing something and I don't understand the why behind it, or I don't see the benefit, I'm like, this is stupid. Like, no.
Absolutely.
And it comes down to little bitty chores or big meetings, it doesn't matter. But if the flip side, if I see the benefit, I'm all about it. Big meetings, little chores, doesn't matter. So awesome. So want to talk about creation of content. In past discussions with other experts in looking into this a lot, part of sales enablement is providing content to the sales team. Now, I don't want to get into the table stakes of what probably a lot of us understand to be content marketing right now. We're not having a content marketing per se conversation right now, more of a sales enablement one. So would like for it to talk about content being produced in regards to getting the feedback from the sales team. Because I would love for marketers to talk to sales team about how they can be part of the content marketing equation in getting the assets that they need, be it a top awareness, middle consideration, or latter buying stage content.
Yeah. So let me share with you the end result of this company we implemented. This just simple meeting. We had a spreadsheet with a link of all the places there was content, and on the right hand side, column 2 had the category of which the content fit into. And at some point there was a title. Another column was what was it? Like a kind of description of what the content was about. But this is the end result. And this all came from, so it was anybody on the sales, support, or success team who needed a piece of content would go to this simple spreadsheet. It's like, look at the category. Oh, this addresses this friction point, or this addresses that. And it was about 100 different articles, pieces of content.
Love it.
That worked really, really well. So that came from just people saying friction points, sharing their friction points and what people are asking for. Or what they're
so you had like some Google Share doc that the sales would be doing it and marketers knew to go access it and check it out.
Well, it was the other way around. So it was the salespeople knew where to go, know where to go to access content. Marketing people would update what content they were creating, because usually the marketers are creating content. And it was like, people were like, the salesperson was like, hey, we need to, like, do we have a video on this? Or do we have an article on this? And, marketers usually like, we've got 3 blog posts on this exact topic, right? 'Cause they know they're targeting, they're looking at the top of the funnel, but they're just not utilizing that same top of the funnel content that's already created for the middle and the bottom of the funnel. So I think it's really, really easy. And also post funnel, right? So one of the things we did with our customer support team, and this is part of it because it's all about the sale before and after the sale. The salesperson or support person, after the end of a conversation, would go to this document, hey, I think here's a blog post I think you would find interesting. And it was just like, it was just a thing that you could do to leave the customer with a little bit more value. And again, they didn't do a lot of work. They just go into the spreadsheet and like, what's this customer? Small business? Okay, I'm going to send them this article, right? It was really, really simple.
Yeah. And they were like, I've asked them twice to set up a call. They didn't reply. So how about I just go in and I call it sweat and dissing.
Yeah.
You pull away a little bit by just dropping in, buzzing in. Here's something helpful. I'm out. People are like, thanks, right?
Exactly.
They'll take your call next time.
It was also a reason for the salespeople to follow up, right? Like after the call happened, like, oh yeah, I thought of you with this article, right? It was just like a thing that was relevant. And the other thing I want to say is like, so I had the marketing team, and
let's stop there. I want to highlight what you just said for all the salespeople out there. What a fantastic pointer Sujan just gave for you to what to do. They're on your follow-up list, but when you do follow up with them, go to, obviously give it your marketing credit, but then what a great way to say that, oh, I was just thinking about you, and then obviously make sure what you tie to, matches up with your notes and make sure it's congruent with who they are and everything.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to highlight that because that is such a fantastic for the salespeople out there listening. Hey, I just thought of it. I was thinking about you. I mean, what other end of the screen, seeing an email like that? Like, wow, that's freaking amazing. Anyways,
yeah. And you could do it without having to think about anything, right? Like it's a
right?
thing.
That's what I mean. Is like it's completely authentic and genuine, and it somewhat is because you are putting the upfront effort to be able to do that kind of stuff. So
absolutely,
not just genuine, you're just working a system, a thoughtful system that is designed to be helpful. And so what if it's systemized? All right? Like, don't
absolutely. Everything should be systemized regardless. The other thing is, and I see this all the time, is when the marketing folks should jump on sales demos, sales calls, as many of them as they can. Go get 100, just go jump on a call, once or twice a week, and don't say anything, put yourself on mute and just listen. The result, I've done this now for 5 companies, me personally being on the call. And every time I come out of maybe after 5 or 6 calls, I'm like, we can automate 60% of this. Not that so let's dive into why a sales call needs to happen, right? Most of the time, the customer on the other end wants the sales call to happen, even though there's probably things they can read online, because they want to build trust. They want to know more detail about what the heck there is. They want to have somebody who can do Q&A at the end or answer questions. And if it's larger sales, they may have to go back a couple times. So relationship is a key, right? But everything I just said doesn't necessarily need, that person doesn't necessarily need to describe how to use the product, service, whatever. They just need to be there for the trust, the relationship, the questions. So don't get me wrong. explaining the product or whatever it is very, very, very important. But you can replace it with webinars. You can replace it with videos, with blog posts. And I'm not saying replace. I'm saying substitute and continue to have the call. So imagine if like you knew people were going to ask these three questions, and you're a salesperson, and you said before the call,
exactly,
1 or 2 hours before the call, you said, "Hey, do me a favor, watch these 3 videos because that's going to help you explain a lot of the stuff. We'll dig into this." And now you have a much more productive call. And so what I did from the marketing end was I was like, okay, I would just pen and paper, and I just wrote down all the things people were asking that we can then create either a blog post on, a video on, a webinar on, or anything of that nature, an ebook on. And we would just create this for the salesperson and let them send it, or suggest they send it before the call, or even after the call, right? So a lot of times, one of the behaviors we saw were like people would ask the questions anyways. They had a 30-minute call, but then they would forget, right? Because the person on the other end, the customer, is not going to take notes and all that stuff all the time. So it would be a follow-up email. Again, another reason to follow up. That wasn't like, hey, I'm just following up to see if you're ready to buy. It just sounds really, that's not a relationship. So anyways, automating a lot of the stuff that happens over and over and over again.
I love it. Now, this is great. We're kind of reaching our time limit. So wanted to ask a question and see if you've worked with this. Let's call this marketing enablement, and feel free to use that term and talk about it, because with marketers, you want to get the ball rolling on the content and getting stuff out there. And a lot of the times, the best ways to do that is with your own employees to engage with your stuff, within the first hour or so. How have you seen marketing get sales teams to potentially band together and maybe share out their content as it's getting posted, to get involved? First of all, do you buy into that line of thought to get your employees
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. And then now, how have you seen it happen?
Yeah. So I'll give you 3 examples. At Web Profits, ADP, the big payroll company, and HubSpot. So what I see all 3 companies do, Web Profits, we implemented it, but essentially every person at the company is a walking, talking megaphone for the sales and marketing of the company. It's a voluntary thing. You early on in employment, you ask them, hey, can we do this for you? ADP mandates that like everyone selling has a social media profile, like Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, that's specific for ADP. And that's not, ADP doesn't own it. It's just like, hey, here's what you're going to do it if you're not comfortable sharing it. They will share and curate content for you. They will share stuff. They will send you things you can curate. So it's really that. I actually went to HubSpot. I was speaking at HubSpot, a HubSpot event, and I sent them my slides, or I wrote an article. I forgot exactly what it was, but I mentioned HubSpot, and one of the salespeople knew about it, and it actually. He was like, he pretty much posted in the HubSpot Slack saying, hey guys, hey sales team, show some support on this article that makes us look good. And they did. And my tweet was trending in Boston for like 3 hours because they all tweeted it and retweeted it and shared the heck out of it. Right. And so like, that's a great example of like getting your team to really do it. So there's things you can do on behalf of the employee, and they can opt in. Obviously it's voluntary completely. Then there's really getting them to buy into the fact of like, hey, every couple of days we're going to give you something, or every couple of weeks we would love for you to like participate in this thing that just shares us what we do. So it's a kind of a culture thing. And that's like maybe that retweet I'm talking about of like, hey, retweet this button. Now, obviously they maybe have content that curate or whatever, but what I found selfishly, the way to sell this for the employee, the salesperson, to go and why to do this is because one, it builds trust and it helps you build a relationship faster with your customer, because those are things that we just mentioned that are very important of why people want to talk to you in the first place. So if you have an online profile and you have a somewhat of a personal brand, guess what? Your job is a lot easier. So it's selfish. It's going to be beneficial to that salesperson. Number 2 is it reduces friction point, right? Like if you're just sharing good content on the web and somebody sees it, or you can point people to it in your email signature or whatever, the person on the other end can do some homework about you, or what have you, so that people are not like, you come off as more of an industry expert, or
Mm-hmm.
you've shared some content. Like I wrote a blog post or created a video about like our process, our team at Web Profits. And I had a sales call. I very, very rarely join sales calls, but I had jumped on the sales call because potential client wanted to speak to me. And I went onto a rant of like how our team works or whatever. And they're like, hey, let me just stop you there. I know exactly what you're talking about. I watched that video like 3 times. I shared it with my team. This is why I want to hire you. I just wanted to hear you say that again. Right. And it was just like, that was what sold the deal, is because I reiterated how our team work, and I created this video on our team because so many people asked me on the phone and our salespeople on the phone how our team was structured and why we're different. And so, that was really a marketing, as a sales thing we created that then was, used in the sales call.
Fantastic stuff, Sujan. I mean, absolutely fantastic stuff. And I love podcasts like this where they're a mix of high level, but then takeaways, and what people can start literally listen to this, read it, once we turn it into a post, and go back and start applying this stuff right away. These are all stuff as a marketing team, you just gotta do it. And this isn't any sort of magic formula or algorithm you need to crack or any sort of class you need to take. These are all things you start doing right away. So get with your sales team, get with your sales leaders, go grab a beer or late lunch or a mocktail, whatever it is, and develop that relationship, because it's all about sales and marketing departments today. And that's not going away. So Sujan, wonderful stuff. How can people continue to learn from you?
Yeah. So best place to, to kind of keep following me is Twitter, at Sujan Patel, or my website, sujanpatel.com. I blog a lot. I share a lot of things. So best thing to do is subscribe to my newsletter. It's usually kind of share like whether it's a video, content piece I created for my site or elsewhere. And again, if you have any questions, just feel free to ping me. I'm an open book as long as you're asking questions or the right questions.
There you go. The right question. All right. Well, hey, thanks so much, Sujan, and looking forward to having you again on sometime down the road.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the latest podcast. Feel free to go to magnificent.com/blog to see the show notes for this interview, as well as those from many other of the world's top marketing experts. Have a great day.